Good morning, colleagues, students, stakeholders, friends of the department, and all distinguished guests. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the Department of Commercial Accounting, the heartbeat of UJ that sits within the School of Accounting and the College of Business and Economics. My name is Philani Tsusini, and I'm a lecturer within the department, and I'm honored to be your MC this morning. This year, South Africa celebrates 31 years of democracy, and significant achievements and milestones have been reached in changing the social and economic landscape of our country. However, fraud and corruption remain as some of the challenges faced by our country that pose as threats that can undermine our democratic values, accountability, the Batsupele principles, the foundations of good governance and sustainable development. Fraud and corruption are prevalent in both the public and private sector, and often the first question that is asked when the fraud and corruption is uncovered is, where were the auditors? Today's public lecture, titled "The Role of Forensic Auditing in Tackling Fraud and Corruption," will help deepen our understanding of the crucial role played by forensic auditors, the tools and technologies that they use in the fight against fraud and corruption, and the strides that have been made to protect public interest. A special welcome to our keynote speaker, Ms. Tholakele Ndlazulwana, whom I will introduce later, and she has attracted this diverse audience, and she will share her valuable insights and practical perspectives on this topic. A special welcome also to the team from the Auditor General of South Africa. A welcome to the Dean of the College of Business and Economics, Prof. Tankiso Moloi. A welcome to the Director of the School of Accounting, Prof. Ben. A welcome to our HOD, the HOD of the Department of Commercial Accounting, Ms. Boitumelo Kuzwayo. A welcome to all the colleagues from the School of Accounting. A welcome also to our online audience, as this public lecture is being streamed on YouTube and X platform. Okay, before we get started, just some two housekeeping rules. Okay, firstly, please kindly switch your phones to silent mode. And then secondly, the restrooms are located on my left. That is the gentleman's restroom. They're on this side, and then the ladies are on my right. When I started, I mentioned that the Department of Commercial Accounting is the heartbeat of UJ. And you may be wondering why I was saying that. Well, we'd like to take this opportunity just to introduce ourselves briefly, who we are, what drives us, and what makes us special within the wider UJ community. We will now play a short introductory video that will introduce our department and tell you a little bit more about ourselves. Thank you.
Good day, Sanibonani, Tobela, Dumelang. My name is Boitumelo Kuzwayo, and I'm the head of department at the Department of Commercial Accounting. The Department of Commercial Accounting is one of two departments within the School of Accounting, which is housed within the College of Business and Economics. We are based at the Soweto campus, which is resident to almost 5 million residents within the heart of Johannesburg. We are also down the road from Southern Africa's largest hospital, which is Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. Our vision at the Department of Commercial Accounting is to develop critical thinkers, thought leaders, and difference makers. Our staff complements includes passionate and competent staff. Our key strategic objectives include teaching and learning, research, and community engagement. And a key thread amongst all of these objectives is social impact as well as innovation. At the Department of Commercial Accounting, we offer a flagship qualification, which is the Diploma in Accountancy. This is a qualification for entry-level accountants or as well as accounting technicians. Part of our qualification is to create leaders in our field. We attract students who are self-driven, have hope for a brighter future for themselves as well as generations to come. A large cohort of our students that we attract are first-generation students within their families. That means they are the first ones to actually go to university. A key component of our qualification is to ensure that we equip our students with the following: critical thinking. As part of our key strategic focus, we look at research. One of the things that we love to do within the Department of Commercial Accounting is make sure that we contribute to the scholarship of teaching and learning in the 4 main disciplines that we teach. And this includes financial accounting, financial management, management accounting, auditing, as well as taxation. And this includes within the private as well as the public sector. As a Department of Commercial Accounting, we understand the need to perform multidisciplinary research. One of the important factors that we take into account within the Department of Commercial Accounting is ensuring that we maintain as well as create relationships with stakeholders. This includes people within industry, professional bodies, as well as internal UJ stakeholders. We have strong partnerships with the following stakeholders: the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, also known as ACCA, the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, also known as SAICA, as well as the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, also known as CIMA. We also have a few relationships with IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, as well as the South African Institute of Tax, also known as SITE. Our qualification offers exemptions with some of these professional bodies. As part of our future projects within the Department of Commercial Accounting, we are working hard in order to develop postgraduate qualifications, as well as short learning programs, including continuous education programs. Over and above the current diploma in accountancy that we offer, we currently offer short learning programs to people who work within industry. As a team, we are also looking to develop postgraduate qualifications that cater to people within the industry, as well as people with undergraduate qualifications. The Department of Commercial Accounting boasts a lot of success stories. Our staff, as well as students, have been recipients of multiple awards, including the Mail and Guardian Top 200 South Africans, SAICA's Top 35 Under 35, academic awards within ABASA, CIMA, IIA, as well as our staff who have obtained postgraduate qualifications, including PhDs. In 2024, the Department of Commercial Accounting conferred its first honorary doctorate on Nonkululeko Gobodo. She is the first Black female South African to become a chartered accountant in South Africa, and this happened in 1987. Within her career, she then founded what is now known to be SNG Grant Thornton, one of the big 5 auditing firms within South Africa. We look forward to engaging you as you walk through the corridors at our Soweto campus as students and stakeholders. Thank you.
The University of Johannesburg, our future reimagined.
All right, so I hope that you enjoyed the video and that it provided you a little bit information about who we are as the host department. At this point in time, I'm going to call upon Prof. Ben Marks, the Director of the School of Accounting, to give some opening remarks. Prof. Ben, you will be proud to know that Tholakele is a proud UJ alumni, and you actually taught her auditing many years ago before the university changed colors. Over to you, Prof. Ben.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, distinguished guest, our distinguished speaker, our Executive Dean, Professor Malloy, our HOD, all our honours guests, online in the venue, all protocols observed. It's a phenomenal privilege to stand here, to speak to all of you, and to welcome you all to this exciting public lecture by one of the leaders in the profession. And I'm totally, what is the word? Unbiased or biased, if I say that, but I'm so proud to have been able to talk to her, and we need exceptional leaders that we have here that leads the way to make sure we have a society where we all can prosper and strive and thrive. But a bit of background and just, we've got our executive dean here, just acknowledge Prof. Tankiso Moloi, who's leading the college with, in a remarkable manner. I always say this, you're leading, and that it's testimonial also. Tholakele that's here, Prof. Tankiso leads from the top, three master's degrees, 2 PhD degrees, CISA, CIMA, and many more, and he published and he lectures still. So that's the spirit in which we thrive. But a bit of background just to the University of Johannesburg, like Prof. Mpedi always says, the great University of Johannesburg. We all know the university was formed in 20 years ago, the merger with Rao, Wits Technikon, and then the Vista campuses. And so we talk, the great University of Johannesburg was formed. The university is 20 years old, but has performed phenomenally and has established itself as a leader in accounting education, and the School of Accounting and the college has established themselves as a leader in education. But UJ, 20 years old, has made their mark, a phenomenal mark in the higher education industry, and that's you can see from the rankings, ranked number 1 in Africa, number 1 in South Africa by Times Higher Education, ranked in the top 300 rankings worldwide by the QS rankings, and then CBE, of which the School of Accounting and the great Department of Commercial Accounting are ranked 1 in Africa and in South Africa. So through that, just a bit of to see UJ is an exceptional university with exceptional values. And I think that just speaks to, if you look at the values, and I mean, it just takes it, we talk about innovation. And I mean, today's public lecture is testimonial to that. Innovating, bringing public sector education, bring it together and show how critical it is to make sure that we can live and thrive in an environment where bribery, corruption, all of that are combated through exceptional wisdom and expertise like we have with our distinguished speaker today. But innovation, then from that, always do it with impact. And I think, again, today's public lecture and the work that the Department of Commercial Accounting doing, speaking directly to impact in the classroom, through research, making a societal impact. And I mean, that's just testimonial to who UJ and the department represent. Inclusiveness, always inclusiveness of everybody, and then always doing it with integrity. And I think that's just the values that we stand for, and I think it's values we share with our distinguished speaker. Then just within that, so within UJ sits the College of Business and Economics, which is the largest college of the university, more than 20,000 students, more than that. So if CBE fails, the university fails, but CBE thrives, so the university thrives. But then taking it home, so I'm leading up to it, the School of Accounting is the biggest school within the college with more than 10,000 students. So if the school does well, the college does well, Prof. So we always must do a bit of marketing here. But so we're very privileged. And then within the School of Accounting, we've got the phenomenal Department of Commercial Accounting with exceptional staff doing phenomenal work. So it's just, in short, I'm not going to take long. We want to listen really to Tholakele, but I just want to say it's really an honor. I mean, I thought when I was a bit younger, I think I still had hair at that stage, but it was a really, I mean, it was exciting times, and it is, I mean, it was the end of Rao, but it was the beginning of a new chapter, and it's so wonderful. I always want to say it's 360 to have you here today and to do that. And thank you very much, Boitumelo, to you and the team, all of your leadership, and bringing this exceptional alumni to come and talk to us today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Ben. Ladies and gentlemen, now that you have been officially welcomed by our leadership, Ubaba Wekaya, I think that you are now feeling at home and you are relaxed, and we can now get to the main business of the day. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker. I have to read the biography because it's quite loaded, so I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Ms. Tholakele Ndlazulwana is an acting business unit leader for investigations at South Africa's Supreme Audit Institution, the Auditor General of South Africa. She joined AGSA as a senior manager in the investigations business unit in 2020, where she led the COVID-19 proactive audits, the first of its kind in the organization. She also championed the fraud risk identification model focusing on the control environment. She is a chartered accountant with over 17 years of professional experience, which 13 years was spent as a forensic practitioner. Most recently, Tholakele has completed the IWFSA Women Leadership Program with Duke University. Her experience covers the private and public sectors, conducting various forensic assignments, and encompasses areas as diverse as auditing, consulting, and financial management. She completed her articles in the Financial Services Department at PwC and has been specializing in fraud investigations and dispute services since 2009 within various audit firms. Tholakele has also led one of the TVET colleges as their chief financial officer. She has also been involved in a number of speaking engagement forums, which includes, amongst others, at conferences of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and conferences on insurance claims. In these engagements, she provided insights on how the forensics profession can assist in combating fraud and corruption. Tholakele is a passionate and driven individual that thrives in challenging situations and is always looking for opportunities to expand her knowledge base and experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Ms. Tholakele.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful and quite an introduction. You know, as a person, when you set about having your life, you'd never really realize how much you achieve until somebody reads it out for you like he just did. Maybe just to also bring it back to the video that was played where Ms. Khuzwayo spoke about most of the kids at the Soweto campus being the first of. I'm also the first of in my family. So it has really come 360, Prof. Ben. I do remember those days, and I still hold true to eat the banana and have a peanut snack before any exam. I still do that, so that you have the energy to tackle anything that comes your way. So it is an honor and a privilege to have come back here. As I was walking up the stairs, actually just from the gate coming in, I was like, oh my God. I remember when I used to walk through these stairs to go to the library, the water fountain. I was even saying to Seho, just for old time's sake, when I leave here, I am going to the student center. I don't know if it's still called the student center, but in my day, it was called the student center, just so that I can see what more has happened there. But yeah, my name is Tholakele Ndlazulwana. I am a chartered accountant and a forensic practitioner, as has already been said. So today, I will be speaking about the role of forensic auditing in tackling fraud and corruption in South Africa. It is really both an honor and a responsibility to speak to you today on a topic that sits at the heart of our democracy and public service. We do gather at a time where public trust in institution is fragile. We need to We get at a time when public trust in institutions is fragile and the need for transparency and accountability has never been greater. Corruption is not just a sorry, technological difficulties. Okay, as we wait for technology to come to terms with where I am and looking at innovation and AI, I will. Okay, you'll let me know when the slides are up. But nonetheless, as I was saying, corruption is not just a financial crime, it is a betrayal of public trust as it diverts resources from those who need it. You need to close?
There's a PowerPoint and then open it again because it's not connected.
Okay. I promise you, we did test this earlier and it worked perfectly. But like Murphy's Law, it will do that to you when you actually now need to go live. So I guess I get a second chance to start my opening. And then I won't have to be that nervous anymore. Okay. It is both an honor and a responsibility to speak to you today on a topic that sits at the heart of our democracy and public service, the role of forensic auditing in tackling fraud and corruption in South Africa. We gather at a time when public trust in institutions is fragile, and the need for transparency and governance has never been greater. Corruption is not just a financial crime. It is a betrayal of public trust. It diverts resources from those who need it the most, undermines service delivery, and erodes the very good foundation of good governance. In this lecture, we will explore how forensic auditing, a powerful investigative tool, can help us confront this challenge head-on. We will look at how it complements the work of institutions like the Auditor General of South Africa, how it uncovers hidden fraud schemes, and how it empowers oversight bodies and citizens to demand better. We will also reflect on some cases from procurement irregularities to local municipalities that show the tangible impact of forensic audits. And we will definitely also touch on some of the challenges that we face, and we will also look at some of the strides we've made in the forensic field since its inception. Ultimately, this is a call for action, a call to strengthen our audit institutions, to protect the whistleblowers, to engage civil society, and to ensure that the public resources serve their rightful purpose, building a just, transparent, and equitable South Africa. Now, we will then dive into our lecture. So, as it was said, I'm from the Auditor General, so I must give a pay rent to my employer. So, the Auditor General, as you can see from the vision and mission, right, our vision and mission fits so well with what we are about to speak about here today. Because at its core, the Auditor General's role is to build public confidence and public trust through the audit of the public resources. Okay, clearly the gremlins just don't want me, they just do not want me delivering this lecture, and this is quite an important topic for it to do this. Maybe we should be blaming corruption. It ate, it ate all the innovation that comes with this presentation. Still nothing. Do you want me maybe to give you the slides then? Okay, while we wait for the gremlins to get out of the system, since the topic of today is corruption, and I know we have quite a diverse audience today. We have students, we have faculty, we even have people from our colleagues in our field from the legal fraternity. So maybe for students that are just in this room or even the ones online, does anybody know what corruption is? You can give me the Oxford definition, it's okay. But I just want to understand, at least from the students who might like to be part of this specific field, if maybe they know what corruption is or what it means to them, while we sort out the issues over here. Anybody? There are some goodies if you answer, like a good lecturer that I should be. I will give you some goodies at the end of the lecture if you answer correctly. What is corruption? How does it show up in our system today, in our lives? Anybody? Any student here? Anyone? Yes, sir.
I can say corruption is abuse of power or misuse of resources for personal interest.
Yes, we're boy. That's a very good one. And that is the Oxford Dictionary definition of fraud and corruption. But yes, it is an abuse of power in terms of diverting resources, obviously from the ones that need it to the pockets of a few. And maybe just an additional question, what are the types of corruption or fraud schemes that are out there based on your definition? Anybody else want to take that? Go ahead, yes. True, that is our lived realities, right? The JMPD cold drinks. It might sound like it's just a small thing, but think about it, right? When the JMPD stops you there, it's because you have broken some type of law, and they're supposed to give you a ticket. And then you must go pay the ticket, which then will give money into the fiscal of the country, right? So by virtue of you not getting that ticket, you are already putting strain on the fiscal bracket of the country. So yes, that is one way, and it is a very South African lived reality. Any other? Yes?
Tender fraud.
Okay, tender fraud, and we see that all the time in the news, correct? So my team, can you please just note the hands so that we can give the guys their gifts at the end, yes? Kickbacks, good. Okay, let's see if the slides are working. And then, yes. And money laundering. So, yeah, no, clearly okay. Okay, now it works, okay. Okay, now it works, but good. At least we did have a round of trying to see where the audience knowledge and base is in terms of corruption. So basically, like I said, in today's lecture, I am will be speaking to corruption within South Africa, obviously providing context, and I kind of feel like we've already covered the first slide through our little interaction. And then I will also be speaking about the role of forensic audit in getting us out of the FATF grey listing, and then just, the integration, the methodologies, which will include the technology as well as where we've been. I will then give a couple of examples, but at this stage, after the examples given by the audience, I feel like I've covered that. And then obviously, I will close with a call to action, just to reaffirm the call to action that I've mentioned at the beginning of my engagement. Okay. So, in terms of corruption, we've already gotten the definition. It is abuse of entrusted power for private gains. We've spoken enough about also the types, right? We have bribery, which is the JMPD cold drink. We've spoken about the kickbacks. We've spoken about the procurement fraud as well. So there's also nepotism and cronyism, and I think in the news as of late, there's been quite a lot in terms of how the political exposed people are linked to certain irregularities, right? So that is also part of it, as well as embezzlement. Now, embezzlement is also taking money from those that need it and just for a select few. And the easiest story I think all of us can allude to or know about is Steinhoff, right? A lot of us lost quite a lot of money because our pension funds were invested in Steinhoff. So the reason I'm also bringing up Steinhoff is just to show that as much as right now the spotlight is sitting on public sector in terms of corruption and fraud, there's actually a lot also happening in private sector. So this is a encompassing schematic problem within South Africa. So also, in terms of the corruption index, right? I don't know whether we should be happy or grateful, but we are ranked 82 of 180, but we have not moved. So even according to the corruption index of 2023, we were still sitting at 84. So I don't know if we can say it's a positive reframe because we are stagnant, we are not going down. Ideally, we want to move up the ranks, but we can take it as one of the positives for now. But obviously, we are facing a serious challenge, right? And forensic auditing is evolving to meet these issues with advanced tools like real-time audits and data analytics. So I will also then just briefly touch on the grey listing, right, in terms of forensic audit. Again, a question for my students. Does anybody know what grey listing is and why we have been grey listed? Anyone? Okay, my students are shy today, but it's fine. South Africa is on the grey list, right? And I think I want to just highlight the last point here on the slides that's up here, right? That through forensic audit, we are in a position to get out of the grey listing. So one of the 22 key issues that put us on the grey listing was the actual identification of corruption and fraud and anti-money laundering practices. And then the second one was the actual prosecution of that. So through the year, the year and a half that we've been on the grey listing, we've done quite a lot of work as forensic auditors in conjunction with our law enforcement agencies to try and get us out of the grey listing. And I think you would have seen in the news, they are starting to prosecute cases as far back as the COVID-19, right? Issues that we've seen. We have seen also the strengthening of the anti-money laundering frameworks through the upgrade of the FIC Act, right? They have been given more powers. And HSA is also one of those where we were given additional powers in terms of the PAA Act in 2019, where now as Auditor General, we can also pursue what we call a material irregularity, which is aimed at recovering some of those resources that have been lost or stolen. But we still are living with the impact of what the grey listing has been in our lives. It has increased financial scrutiny. It has increased banking costs, but maybe just for now, it's starting to come down. Mr. Khanyago has reduced the rates for the last consecutive 3 meetings. It's still not where it should be, but it is a good sign. Hence, we are also coming out of grey listing. However, we have seen the reduced investor confidence, and you have seen it through all of the motor industry plants that are about to shut down, right? We have quite a lot of them that are shutting down. We had one shut down now in Roslyn, the Nissan. Even in PE, they want to shut down some of their plants there. So it does show the impact of corruption, the systematic corruption. It does not only affect the people on the ground, it actually affects all of us, because with all of this reduced investment, we are expected to carry the deficit through our taxes, etc., right? So our lived realities now are the same. Whether you are in the middle bracket, whether you are, grassroots level, even the people in the higher brackets are now starting to feel the systematic elements of corruption through the grey listing. But like I said, for everything there is a silver lining. We are about to get out of the grey listing in October. You can also go check. National Treasury did give a briefing in June in terms of where we were and what was still outstanding. So there is an envisioned date of us getting out of the grey listing in October 2025. Now we are going to speak about why actually we are here, right? What is forensic audit? So forensic audit combines a couple of skills: accounting, investigation, and technology. It is a growing field with high demand for skilled professionals. And its whole aim or objective of forensic auditing is to detect fraud, corruption, and financial irregularities. And this is also entrenched specifically on the audit standard that is called ISA 240. The ISA 240, which is the auditor's responsibility to assess the likelihood of fraud occurring in an auditee. So this is where then in this field we are situated so head-on in terms of responding to combating fraud and corruption. And so what then that means is when you have all of these, you will be in a position to uncover fraud schemes like procurement manipulation, right? So how do we do this? Obviously, everything is anchored on legislation. So specifically for procurement fraud or procurement schemes, you have what we call the Public Management Finance Act, and you also have the Municipal Finance Management Act, right, which governs how public sector should be appointing specific suppliers to tender, as well as then to deliver on those services. So as part of the ISA 240, some of the tools that then we do employ, which I will get to later on in the slides, is things like interviews, right? So interviewing skills are quite key because you can follow a paper trail, but most often than not, where we get our key information when we conduct forensic audits, it's through engagements, because people do circumvent systems and work outside of the systems just so that then there is no paper trail. So if you hone on your investigative skills, then that's where you will be great. And forensic audit also, in terms of the anti-corruption, we then get to support legal proceedings with evidence-based findings. I will also get into that later on in the slides to show how HSA as well collaborates with all of the other public bodies from this instance, because we are at the beginning of the transaction, while the rest of the public bodies only come at the end of the transaction when the money has actually been expended. And ideally, forensic audit should also help to strengthen internal controls and risk management. And most importantly, it will help us promote accountability by identifying responsible parties. I will also elaborate more on the last one through the ecosystem that HSA has put together to show how we can all then be involved in promoting accountability as a nation. So, like I said, how HSA then integrates in this. HSA is a Schedule 9 institution, or Chapter 9 institution under the Constitution, right? So we are independent of the public sector. We report to Parliament, and we basically audit all public resources, right? So as part of our own audit mandate, as I've mentioned, our investigations business unit, which is what I represent, is at the core of assisting HSA in the identification of those fraud risk indicators, ensure then that we then respond to it appropriately through things like real-time audits, data analytics. So for real-time audits, or what we can maybe just call early audits as well, you would have seen one of the ones that we did recently was the DLCA, right? It was in the news. Barbara Creasy stopped the tender that was awarded for the licensing machine. And she did actually mention in her statements that it was through the work that the Auditor General of South Africa did in identifying the irregularities that that were incumbent in that process. So that's just an example of how key we are as forensic auditors. I know a lot of people just think forensic auditors, or just an auditor generally, our job is just to tick boxes and just make sure then that there is a paper trail. But as a forensic auditor, that is where you then get to showcase your skills and actually have the impact that you want, right? Hence, I was talking to the real-time audits. And then in terms of data analytics, we do see that the fraud schemes evolve. They evolve all the time. At the beginning of our democracy, maybe let's just say like 20 years ago, it was easy to follow who paid who and where the links are, as evidenced by the Zondo Commission. But after that, anybody in the space would know that now it has actually become difficult to actually have a direct line in terms of identifying those links, which is what we call conflict of interest. So that is where data analytics come in. We have what we call predictive data analytics, as well as proactive data analytics, whereby we then identify what the fraud risks are. So one of the key challenges right now, like I said, is the linkages of the different people. So we have developed what we call multi-conflict of interest checks, right? So it's easy to just link people where it is the supplier and the employee of the government, but everybody has learned that they shouldn't do that anymore, and they will be easily tracked. So we run additional tests for ourselves, where we actually look at multiple directorship. So what that entails is, when I have a company as Tholakele and I am a director, together with Seho, right? So we have one entity, which is Tholakele Pty Limited, but then Seho then has another entity or another company, and she also has a direct link to Bitumelo. So that is what we call multiple directorship. And as a result, we've seen quite a lot of where you find one group of companies that are linked in that manner, whether through a familiarity link, yeah, no, the English, a familiarity link, or just acquaintance link, right? Those are the type of data analytics that we are now running. And on top of that, we run things like checking as well to see if any of the banking details of the supplier actually belong to any of the people that work for either the department or the municipality. And we also look at director details or age. You will be quite surprised how much of exceptions we find where directors are below 18 or are in their hundreds. But those are some of the key identifiers that we see through data analytics, because then you know that from such exceptions, then you have what you will call fronting, right? So that then it does not show that it is the same people all the time getting the same awards. So those are some of the data analytics that we utilize to determine fraud detection. We also have data analytics that more or less are that will show us a pattern, right? So normally as an auditor, you run what you will call a variance check, right? So if it's less than 10%, yay, I can move on. I don't have to look at it. But we've actually realized that that's where the issue is. People know that as an auditor, you have what you call a materiality link, right, or threshold, which is what we are all taught by Prof. Ben and team. I don't know if Prof. Dempsey is still here on accounting, but they would teach you that there is materiality for all of the financial statement line items, right? And that's what mostly we will use to determine whether we need to look at things or not. But with forensic audit or data analytics, we actually look at the entire population. We are not defined by the amount. So we run these data analytics on the entire supplier database. We also run it on the entire GL. So then that then gives you a much more comprehensive idea of where the issues are. You have things like thresholds, like on the PFMA, there is that threshold that says if a transaction is 30 million and upwards, you must subcontract. But you will find then that they will give work products or work frameworks that are below that or just below that, right? But when you run data analytics, you can actually see if it's a trend or if it's a once-off. And then all you need to do, if you find that that is a systematic trend, then you go in and you still do your substantive auditing. Unfortunately, you still need to go and tick boxes. But at a minimum, data analytics is one of our key tools that are actually helping us. Even the SIU recently, they have spoken in detail in terms as well of how they also identify specific transactions that they need to work on through data analytics. But there is actually a collaboration in the space where data analytics are concerned to then see where we all overlap. And that I will also speak to about. I have a slide that encompasses this collaboration on anti-corruption so well, because we also have what we call proactive risk insights that we then share between the public bodies and that are involved in the anti-corruption space, and that will include your DPCIs, your FICs, your SIUs, even your DPSA in terms of your conflict of interest. So basically, that's how specifically the Auditor General mandate fits into forensic audit. But I've also touched and highlighted what then is also happening in the space as a whole. Some of the other tools that then we are looking at is imaging. So within Auditor General, we don't necessarily have that, but we are collaborating with other audit firms. So where we get them in and then we then get them to come in and image surveys where we have what we call limitations. So limitations are where when you come in as an auditor, you then ask for a specific document or a specific supporting documentation for a transaction, and the auditee tells you that they have nothing. But you know money has gone out, right? Remember, we have the supplier database, we have the GL database, but there is no physical paper trail that then you can follow to see who did what when. And you will also have noticed recently there's quite a lot of cyber attacks, a spate of cyber attacks. So that's where then imaging comes in, where you then go into the server to then determine where where you have seen such. And a good example from the work that we have done is what we did at Postbank. About 2-3 years ago, you guys would remember there was a whole thing about the SASSA payments in terms of the cards that were lost between Postbank and SASSA, and nobody really wanted to take accountability in terms of where that money went. So then we went in and we imaged the servers from both ends so that then we can determine where the breach is. So imaging is also one of the key tools that are coming up. And also AI is also one of the things that you can employ. As much as for now AI is still relatively new, right, and there's also all the legal connotations surrounding it, we are also still trying to see how we can work within the mandates. But if you have an LLM whereby it's the learning machine and you just tell it what exactly you are looking for, but it will be only on publicly available information. However, you can still write scripts or teach your machine on your own private data to identify anomalies. So that's where AI is going to be helping us as well in terms of dealing with corruption. Earlier, I also spoke about AGSA's key role in combating corruption. So I'm not sure how many of you know about AGSA's culture shift strategy. It's called hashtag 2030 culture shift. So the idea is to move 30% of auditees from doing harm to doing good by 2030. So what does this mean? We've spoken about lived realities, right? In my opening, I spoke about how corruption takes resources from those that need it and puts it in specific individuals' pockets. And what does that lead to? Lack of service delivery and very unpleasant lived realities, right? And I think all of us here have lived that. The load shedding, touch wood, it's been going on for like 100 days now, allegedly, so touch wood that it doesn't come back. And you have your issues as well about potholes, etc. We are seeing, we still have pit toilets. It's been 31 years of democracy, like our MC said, but we're still seeing things like that. So basically then what we are saying as HGSA is that in the next, well, now we are only left with 5 because we're in 2025. We are looking to incorporate, we are incorporating forensic audit to assist us in the culture shift. So we are aspiring to have a more direct and consistent impact on improving the lived realities of South Africa. And how do we aim to do this? We aim to do it through providing insights. So remember I spoke about proactive audits, I spoke about data analytics that then direct us to specific areas to look at. So what then we do is we then go and audit that from a forensic perspective. So for procurement, we actually look at the transaction from start to finish. What does that mean? It means we look at when the bid goes out, we look at when it's evaluated, we look at whether it was the correct person that should have gotten that data. Then we come to what we call contract management, when now the money has been expended. Then we actually go and check for service delivery. And then that's the whole bracket. So when we say we provide insights, that's what we are saying. It's actually breakthrough insights that then we utilize to go and influence those charged with governance, you know, like your coordinating ministries, your DGs, your CFOs, your CEOs, etc., that are within this ecosystem. We try and influence them to do the right things. And if that doesn't help, then we have what we call enforcement. Remember, I spoke about our extended powers as AGSA in terms of the MI section. In the MI part, what we then do is we raise what we call material irregularities. I know there is one that is called a reportable irregularity in terms of audit, but ours is called a material irregularity, and it is aimed at actually holding people accountable for any transaction that has some sort of financial loss, where we have fraud indicators, and then where we can also establish that there has been harm to the public in terms of the resources not coming in. And one of the examples of harm to the public, because that is also one of the key things that is always difficult, you guys will remember Hammanskraal, right? Where there was an outbreak because then the sewer went into the water. So those are the type of things that we are raising from an audit perspective, obviously together then with the law enforcement fraternity at large. And we then use that as enforcement. So what we are trying to achieve with this culture shift at the end of the day is to have the public sector demonstrate commitment to improving the lived realities of South Africans, right, by literally delivering on what they are supposed to deliver on. Currently, resources are not necessarily being spent per the mandate of these departments or municipalities, and we have seen that. So we have what we call PETI, where P is performance, right? And that is where we are saying they need to be delivering based on their mandate. Accountability, it's where we actually want to see those charged with governance, those that have oversight, actually doing what we call consequence management and holding people accountable. And I know from this platform where I'm standing and the room at large, I think that's the biggest pitfall that we are all facing, right? We are seeing people are not being then held to account. And then transparency just means that we need the auditees, meaning municipalities, your SOEs, your departments, to provide auditors and other stakeholders with timely and relevant information, so that then we can actually make sure that then the resources comply with legislation, right? So, and transparency is key. I think in almost all of the newspaper articles, when you read them, especially where you have huge tenders that come into the news, they always quote three things. The tender process was not transparent and fair, right? And it went to people that it should not have gone to. So that's what we are saying with transparency. And I did mention limitations previously. So we have developed other procedures to then confirm delivery, because if there is no transparency, then we can't, as auditors, offer an audit opinion. And then obviously then the last one is institutional integrity. So we really are trying to influence them to then behave ethically, comply with legislation, and act in the best interest of institutions, so that then we avoid conflict of interest. Basically, with this culture shift strategy, what we are trying to do is to call for ethical leadership, which resonates with what guides local government leaders. I mean, there's been white papers since 1998. You spoke about Batupele in your opening remarks. And, you know, so that's what our democracy is basically based on. But currently, nobody is living that value. So with the culture shift strategy from HSA, that's what we are trying to do. We are literally just trying to influence our auditees to do the right thing and do what matters, so that then the lived realities on the ground then change. We are also trying to then be in a position through our audit work, then collaborate with the powers that then can take it forward. Because remember, as an auditor as well, you are still just limited to certain things that you can only do within the audit fraternity. We do not, as normal auditors, maybe let me just say that, as regulatory auditors, we do not confirm on fraud, right? We can identify fraud risk indicators, we can collaborate with other people, and that's where HSA sits. We are in the forefront of any transaction, so we then identify those fraud risk indicators, we raise the non-compliances, and where we can actually see that it needs to be investigated further, then that's where the collaboration comes in with law enforcement as well as other public bodies. So basically that is what the culture shift strategy of HSA is. It is for us to try and assist in the combating of fraud and corruption in South Africa, seeing we are also charged with building public trust through the audit of public resources. I also earlier spoke about our accountability ecosystem. So if you look at this, right, this is where everybody sits. Hence, the call to combat fraud or be engaged in combating fraud and corruption not only sits with one person. If you look at this, from the left, you have the leadership and the decision makers, right? Which is the Green Party, the officials, the audit committees, your municipal council, your mayors, etc. And then on the left, on the right, then you have your support and oversight. And then right there in the middle, you have active citizenry. And this is all of us here. And hence the lecture today, to discuss how fraud, forensic audit, together with everybody that's on the ground, can then help us. So with this accountability system, this is what we then want to do. We want to ensure that all stakeholders play their role. Remember what I spoke about on the previous slide in terms of petty? So these are the stakeholders that then we are calling on to then help us achieve that. Because a failure by any of these stakeholders is a failure to the entire system. And forensic auditors also then help in the system. We are sitting there on insight, influence, and enforcement. Now, I will also then just go into detail in terms of more about how then we detect fraud, risk, fraud and mismanagement. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's moving on the other side. So, in terms of audit methodology, I touched a bit on the use of data analytics, right, and forensic audits. So we also have performance audits. So recently, I think all of us have seen the deterioration in infrastructure, right? So forensic auditors then get to work with performance auditors because remember from data analytics, I can identify where the issues are sitting, but I do not necessarily have the skill to say this building, should be what it is and at the value that I have paid for. So this is also where collaboration comes in. And I mean, you would have seen in a lot of the issues that are coming out, right? In terms of dilapidated buildings, we've had quite a lot of fires happen within the COJ on the buildings that had been hijacked. So you've also would have seen quite a lot also happen in the news where you have things like all of the money that was lost at the health department. As much as it's only now that they are looking at prosecuting the COVID-19, I think most of us remember Hamilton Ndlazulwana with the 5 beautiful cars that got him into trouble. So we actually figured that out before it hit the news. So we were already working on it based on, like I said, the forensic data analytics that we were working on. So data analytics also helps us in terms of looking at billing irregularities, which I think most of us here have seen and are privy to. How many of you get a statement from your municipality and you look at it and you're like, Eish, I don't think I've used so much water, or I don't think I've used so much electricity. There's nobody in my house during the day, so there's no way I've spent so many thousands of rands. You would also understand then that from data analytics, actually, we can pinpoint some of those things, right? Remember, I spoke about cyber attacks. So because most of the time, it's either the system is incorrectly configured, which then comes in our information system auditors, which will then look at it. So basically, as a forensic auditor, you kind of wear many hats. You need to understand where the issues sit. But your most important skill is then getting in the support from the relevant skills that where you have identified your issues. So basically, you must try and figure out where the loopholes are, and then get in the rest of the people to then help you firm up your issues. So hence the system audit, the information system auditors, the performance auditors, and any other specialist out there. Especially when it comes to things like your valuation. So for normal regulatory auditors, valuing an asset is a big thing. You must then, be in a position to know whether it needs to be amortized or depreciated. So that's where then you get in your performance auditors, right? And then they come in and they do that work for you. So those are some of the audit methodologies that we utilized, because obviously under the ISO 600 standard, you have that use of a forensic, a specialist. So that includes forensic specialists, etc. And we also use internal auditors, right, which still lives in the realm of ISO 600 standards. So where the internal auditors actually work, we then do rely on them. But I think most of us do know that that is also quite a bit of an issue. So red flags. So there's quite a lot of red flags for fraud, right? You have your procurement corruption, you have your misallocation of resources, you have contract manipulation and improper financial reporting. So misallocation of resources, how you can see that, again, is through the analysis of where the money went. So basically what we do is you take your balance sheet, you literally analyze it, right, first and foremost to see where the spending is. We have, in audit terms, what we call a disclaimed audit opinion. So basically it just means money was spent, but as an auditor, you cannot figure out where it went because there's no piece of paper, right? But when we then run our data analytics, we then look at where the most money was spent. And more often than not, that's where you will find where your issues reside. In terms of whether they are doing it for their mandate, which is the AOPO, or then money is being redirected to where it's supposed to not happen. And I think I've covered quite a lot of case studies in terms of the things that we've seen in the news, right? I've covered DLCA. There was also there was Hamilton Ndlovu, there was the Tembisa Hospital. There's quite a lot, right, in terms of where we are. And as of recently, I think in the last month alone, we've seen quite a lot of media articles about connections. There's quite a lot of newspaper articles on IDT. There's quite a lot of articles on GPA now, which is the government pension authority. There's also been quite a few things about our deputy minister and his son-in-law. So those are just some of the key examples that you have seen in the news, right? And it is literally from investigative audit / forensic audit / investigation. And mind you, it does take a while. It takes a while. It is not something that you can do immediately. It does take quite a lot of whistleblower information. And I know a lot of people will then say, whistleblower protection. We've seen the Papitas of this world and a lot of other people that have whistleblowed and their lives have ended. But on the positive as well, we have seen recently some of those people get to court in terms of killing some of the whistleblowers. So what I'm really trying to achieve or allude to when I say forensic audit or investigation is key is that we are the defense mechanism, basically, or we are trying to be the defense mechanism against corruption, and early detection is key. And that's where the forensic audit sits. Like I said, even though an audit by its nature comes after the fact, we are well aware because it's 12 months after the transaction has occurred. But if it's a multi-year project, you are still within the right time frame to then stop anything. Again, DLCA being case in point, where we did the work and the contract was actually cancelled or it's being sent to court to be cancelled before any money has been expended. So basically that's what we do as forensic auditors. We determine where the issues are. We get in the support of the relevant other specialists, and we try and stop corruption. Hence, we are very key into this role. So the next couple of slides are just to show us how fraud impacts communities, right? And I mean, this is just a simple example of speaking to the students about the tender fraud. So this is how sometimes you will see it emanate, right? The thing is, when you go in as an auditor, you might not necessarily see it on paper. Hence, I said interviewing skills are quite key when you do your work. Because when you then, as part of your forensic work, go and speak to the people on the ground, during audit, one of the key things that Prof. Ben used to like us to write on our exam paper was professional skepticism. And one of the substantive audit procedures was also surprise site visit or surprise visit, right? Basically, those two things actually work the best when you are a forensic auditor. You definitely need to have professional skepticism and just have that sense of curiosity, have that sense of, does it really make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, why does it not make sense, right? And then, because for instance, when the reason I have this here, right? So this one is just an example on water, where, there was an award for 1.2 million for waste removal, and then the 750 will then go to the community for water. And if you just look at the slide itself, right, it's basically more or less what happened to Hammanskraal. They ended up not having enough money to do proper wastage removal. And then as a result, what happened? They then went in, there was no water supply, hence the water tankering, right? And also, that being said, not everybody gets that water. So these are just some of the things that we've picked up during our audits. And so that's why I'm saying it's quite important to then have your professional skepticism. And then this is also basically linking to that. And you would have seen also in the news, ghost employees. As of late, we have a ghost building at JIPA in terms of the news articles, right? And you will ask yourself, how is it that you have a ghost building? Employees are kind of easy because people come in, they leave, some are not removed from the system, but that is literally what we can call the simplest explanation, where there is no intention to defraud the system. It's just that they forgot to take Sekho out of the system when she left, and then somebody then decided to use that as an opportunity and change Sekho's banking details on the system to their own. Hence, then you have a ghost employee based on a person that was there. But then there is others that intentionally just put people that do not work at a specific organization into their system so that they can get money. But basically what this is also only just trying to show is you get, for instance, there, you have a budget of 11 million, right? 10 million for salaries, overtime, expense claims, and then plant sewerage. How many of you have had your electricity go out and you spend the whole day calling, getting reference numbers, and nobody comes during the day. But then after working hours, then you have all of the cars come in and cherry pickers. So it might sound like it's a small thing, right? The overtime. But if you think about it, they are paid a salary for working during the day. They don't work during the day. Then they get overtime. And then that's where then you find that when you do that analysis I spoke about where the money goes, that's basically where the money goes most often than not. So then as a result, there's a limited pot then for service delivery because all the money is going through salaries and expenses. So I know the reason why I'm making these examples is just to show people in the network that corruption and fraud, it's not some pie in the sky concept. It is not perpetuated only by those in charge. It is not only perpetuated by the government, somebody out there in the sky who is called the government. The people on the ground are actually part of the problem. The 50 rand of the cold drink the lady made of JMPD, I know we might not necessarily think it is part of, it's fraud or corruption. No, I just needed to leave quickly, It's going to the court to go pay my ticket is going to take forever. But exactly that. That is where it starts. It's those small little things, and then they pile up, and then the next thing, the fiscal is not having the resources that it needs. But yes, we still have people then who take the little resources that we have, and then they do things that they shouldn't. And then even the last one is just to show then, about IT. Now, we have quite a lot of systems in place. How many of you go to Home Affairs? Go to even the municipality when your billing is irregular and you get there and they tell you, oh no, the system is down, come back. Come back after 2 hours or come back tomorrow or whatever. But yet we have licenses for those systems that are just sitting there. We are paying for it, but somebody is just not utilizing them. So these are some of the smaller examples in terms of how vast the system is. And the reason, like I said, where I try to make it come closer to home is that because in the news, it's always made like, it's those big people. And mind you, I am not condoning that it's not. Let me just put it out there. But I'm just trying to show that it starts small and then it builds, because the guy on the ground, if they do this, then they get promoted, right, to the next level. And when they were doing it at the lower level, they don't see anything wrong when they do it at the next level, and then at the next level, and then the next thing, they are the ones that are making all the big decisions. They are the ones that are appointing the people, and they've been systematically doing this as they were coming up the ranks, so they do not see anything wrong with it. Again, cue in the ecosystem of HSA, where we are trying to influence from your SCM officials and all the way up. So that being said, obviously, we have quite a few challenges, right, when it comes to forensic audit. We do have things like political interference and lack of enforcement. But the biggest one is number 2, which is what has brought us here. The forensic audit fraternity is relatively small. I know I do see quite a few colleagues of mine in here that are in this forensic space, and to show that it is small, I have worked with them throughout my career at different points in time, but they are still relatively the people that you can find in the forensic audit fraternity. And that also being said, our regulatory bodies, which is ACFE and ICFP, are also relatively new, right? Because there's also no specific legislative requirements for you to be a forensic auditor or a forensic accountant for that matter. But we do actually need these resources to assist us, especially for the second part of the leg in corruption. Remember, auditors identify it and then you send it to law enforcement for prosecution. Those specific departments also need forensic auditors so that they can be in a position to read what the regulatory auditor has said, right, and then take it forward. So forensic audit is key. We need those resources. This is a field, it's very intellectually stimulating and also offers you social reform. So it is not just a career, it is a calling. But some of the other challenges is that we do have resistance to reforms, and there's quite a lot of information silos. So hence we also developed our culture shift to have the enforcement part, because you give insights and then you influence, right, through the insights, while doing that sustainably. But if then there's resistance to reform, then we then employ as HSA the enforcement tool. And one of our biggest measures there is that we have what we call a COD, a certificate of debt, right, which is what is at the end of the process. And it is aligned to a specific person. It is no longer it's aligned to a position. So if I was the CEO that did wrong, I will move to another institution, right? And normally then you will expect the new incumbent to be the one that deals with the shortfall. But now the COD is then now linked to a specific person, so it will follow the person. When we have gone through the entire MI process, where we inform, we do remedial action, and if remedial action fails, and then we do the COD. So that's basically how we are also, as HSA, fighting the anti-corruption and in the fraud space by doing that COD. And then these are some of the mechanisms that are in the space. I think earlier I did speak about whistleblower protection to say that this is our biggest area where we get our information. And yes, there is quite a lot of issues with that. There's a lot of legislation currently on the floor now in terms of whistleblower protection to see how it can be strengthened and how they can be protected, right? Because they are also key in driving the anti-corruption mandate. And then we need more public awareness like this, right? In terms of what is our role as citizens, specifically in the fight against corruption and fraud. And then, like I said, we also have open data platforms where we share audit results with other public bodies to then help us close. And then, yeah, community engagement is key. Community engagement is key in this process. And then the last slide is just to show the areas where AGSA is in terms of collaboration. So these are all the places or areas where we are involved as HSA, and these are the collaborations that we have within the space. I've spoken in detail about the different people that we collaborate with, right? We sit on the Fusion Center, which is the shared forensic capabilities, where we have all of these people that are within the ecosystem, and we've contributed to the strategy as of late. I'm not sure if people are aware, the SIU is doing the National Anti-Corruption Framework. They are also thinking of starting what we call an Office of Integrity, which is meant to be the proactive arm. Remember, even with the auditors, whether you are forensic or regulatory, including the law enforcement, we are after the fact. The damage has been done, the horse is bolted. So the OPI office is meant to be proactive, right, to be right there at the start of ensuring that everybody in the ecosystem plays their part and they identify the issues before then they become an issue. So then, okay. On mine, it has moved everything. So then our call to action, right? The call to action is that this is a powerful tool for change. And I do hope that anybody who is interested, especially our students, right, They will be there to help us strengthen the forensic auditing, to expose corruption, recover stolen funds, and restore public trust, because together we can build a transparent and accountable South Africa. So, the last slide is just, again, to just remind everybody that transparency is the antidote to corruption. Hence, we have it on our petty, right, which is the T in petty. And then this is just to brag a bit about my employer of choice and the awards and recognitions that we have, right? So we have been recognized by the World Bank. We actually are doing the audit of UNESCO, and we are the external auditors of the African Union. So, and in the current year, we have been recognized as a top employer for 2025. So then, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, students and members of the legal fraternity, thank you for your presence and engagement today. We've explored the critical role of forensic auditing in combating fraud and corruption, issues that continue to challenge governance, justice, and development in South Africa. From the corridors of academia to the courtrooms and boardrooms, the fight against corruption is a shared responsibility. And forensic auditing stands as one of the most powerful tools in this effort. We've seen how AGSA leverages forensic techniques, real-time audits, and data analytics to expose misconduct and recover misappropriated funds. These processes, they are instruments for accountability, transparency, and justice. For students in our midst, this is a call to pursue careers in this matter. For academics, it's a reminder to continue shaping minds that value ethics and integrity. And for the legal fraternity, it's an ongoing invitation to collaborate more deeply with auditors to ensure that findings translate into enforcement and reform. So these realities, right, as reflected about our grey listing, underscore the agency of strengthening our systems, not just for compliance, but for public good. As we close, let us remember corruption thrives in silence, but accountability thrives in collaboration. Whether you are teaching, learning, litigating, or auditing, your role is vital. Together, we can build a South Africa where public resources serve the people and the integrity is the standard. Let us continue the work, and thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tholakele, for that. I think that was very insightful, and I think you made it practical and relatable, and you made a call to all of us to just think about the roles that we can play in this fight against corruption. I think that was just a nice way to bring it together, and I think we must acknowledge the work that is done by the Office of the Auditor General, the good work. As a Chapter 9 institution, I think maybe we should give them a round of applause just to acknowledge the good work that is done. And it will be interesting to see how the culture shift plays out and the change that will come to our society as the Auditor General just pushes more beyond the audit of financial statements. You would have noticed that at the start I mentioned when I was introducing Tholakele that she is a person that thrives in challenges, and we saw with the technical difficulties, she was able to pivot through those difficulties, so she proved everything that was in that biography. At this point, I'd like to then maybe give the audience an opportunity to ask any questions. I'll also check with our online audience if there are any questions, but let me start first with the audience that is here. Any questions? Yes.
No, thanks. I think I'm
audible?
I think for our online
us,
audience.
but for
yeah.
everybody.
Thank you. Firstly, let me first thank CBE for this engagement. I'm one of the staff members at UJ. I work for finance. I thought I should take this opportunity and just attend because I've got an interest. So I think mine, firstly, is to first comment on the fact that I'm happy that the students are also here. They are listening because Sis Tholakele mentioned something that's very important, that it starts small. It starts small when you start forging that letter from the funder for you to get money. It starts small when you start colluding with a poser for you to get money. Those are the things, when it starts small, when you get there, you're already used to that thing, which is not right. It's not going to take you anywhere. As you can see in the society, as things that are happening, it's all over the news. So I'm grateful that you are here. If you can pass the news, also what has been shared here, to the other students out there, that it's not right. It's wrong. It needs to end. So another part, okay, the part that I want to ask you is especially about the whistleblower protection. I understand you mentioned that it's something that AG is also trying to work on. I want to know, from your perspective, what do you think would be the best way to protect whistleblowers? Because reality out there, we are sitting, some of us know things that we would feel like, am I protected? No, I've seen so and so dying because of 1, 2, 3, 4. I've seen so and so being victimized because of 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks.
Okay, I don't know if you want to take a couple of questions or should I answer after every question?
It's up to you. Do you want to answer each
Okay,
question?
let me maybe answer yours before it gets diluted. So you are correct, right? Hence, I also just mentioned Babita as one of the examples because, I mean, recently it was shown that it's been 4 years. I think during this week, there was that newspaper article that said it's been 4 years and nothing has been done. So, truthfully speaking, the only or one of the mechanisms that should not preclude you guys from reporting whistleblower. For instance, at HSA, we do have what we call a process called request for investigation. And you can do that anonymously. So specifically for us as auditors, and I think with any auditors, if you put it in their whistleblower line, you don't have to include your name. So for instance, we have an RFI process. It's called a request for investigation. You can put in your allegations. We take it through a system where we take it and we respond to it through audit. So from that perspective, even if we don't come back to you and interview you because you've put it as anonymous, it doesn't mean then that we won't action it. We actually have quite a few of those where we then would take it through the process and then see if any of your allegations have materialized or not. So that's like the smallest confidence that I can give you. And then in terms of the bigger protection, right? Whistleblowers can do their disclosures. It's called a protected disclosure. It is not perfect, but under the protected disclosure, it's meant to give whistleblowers some sort of comfort or protection. But truthfully speaking, criminal elements out there are more advanced than the rest of us. As much as we can do it under a PDA, which is the Protected Disclosure Act, whatever you bring to the table, whether to us or SIU or DPCI, all of these institutions actually have those mechanisms. So we can protect you up until a certain point. And we normally actually just don't include, specifically for auditors, for instance, when we then go audit, we will put that supplier or whatever that you've mentioned. Maybe if it is a supplier as part of my audit process, I don't have to disclose to the auditee how I decided to select this one as part of my audit methodology. My audit methodology is risk-based, remember. So where I get my fraud risk indicators or any risk indicators for an audit, they don't have to know. All I do is I've assessed the environment, this is my audit risk, and for me to respond as an auditor, I need to audit the specific tender as part of my response to the audit risk so that then I can give the appropriate audit opinion at the end of the day. So specifically from HSA, that's how we do it. But that's why I'm saying for all the other public bodies, I do know that they have similar mechanisms in terms of protecting, and I still reiterate, it's not perfect, but if not you, then who?
There was a hand this side.
Oh, okay.
First and foremost, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Okay, so there is a huge reliance on technology and Internet of Things, and which also means that somewhere out there is also somebody who's willing to go an extra mile in covering their tracks. And with that being said, it's said that they have to do it by eliminating auditors. So that also impacts me as a student who is willing to go into the audit space in the future, because now I have to question, will my life be hanging on the line once I'm doing my job? What's going to happen to me when I'm trying to charge those, who are charged with governance, for them to be accountable? So how is the profession itself and the relevant stakeholders ensuring that us as future students who are willing to join the auditing space, more particularly in the forensic side, ensure that we are guaranteed protection whilst we are ensuring that, okay, we are now serving our jobs, we are doing everything to mitigate the corruption and all of that. So how are we guaranteed protection when we are now on the working ground?
Okay, no, thanks. I'm glad I invoked some thought about following the profession. Hence, I said it's not just a profession, it is a calling. So if it's a calling, yes, you might feel like you might be attacked, etc. All entities have security measures. So for instance, at HSA, right, we do have our own security protocols. So we do actually, before each audit, assess, never mind just the audit risks that you will be responding to. We do actually assess the security, or if there's any threats or potential threats that the audit team might face when they are going out there to do their work. Now, this is across board. It's not just on forensic auditors, it's also on regulatory auditors. So we do that assessment, and we do put in measures in place to ensure security. Now, with the advancement of technology, as you've said, right, one of the measures that we normally do put in place is that if we have assessed that to go to the field physically might be a problem, we do actually then ask for electronic documentation if it's available. And then you can then audit in the safety of the office. I know we've had quite a few audits that we have done like that. And then we've also, if it's also a problem, even if it's physical documents, we will issue what we call a request for information. These acronyms, they are the same. So a request for information, and then the auditee will bring the information to the office. So that is an extended measure of security that we are affording our audit teams when they go out there. So personal safety, it is a priority. I don't think it's only a priority for HSA. I think it's a priority for everyone, especially in this field. You know, you have forensic auditors, you have forensic investigators, but safety is key for the people that go out there and do their job. And unfortunately, in life, there are no guarantees. You know the saying, the only guarantee in life is death and taxes. So other than that, the most that we can do is just to ensure then that you do your job within a safety net as far as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I'll take one more question and then check with the online team.
All right.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay, I'll say 2 because there's none online, but you can start.
All right, thank you. I just want to check that, is there some sort of enforcement in relation to ensuring that, especially municipalities that are not doing well, you know, in terms of their books, that at least there's prevention? Because I don't remember a time when the Auditor General gives a report and not mention municipalities as a red flag. They are always on the list. And you've mentioned that you only come after the damage has been done. So is there some sort of a process where there are intervention? Because I remember there was a time even on the report where there was an issue of skills in those municipalities to ensure that there's intervention and these cases are minimal.
Oh, then I can answer here. Okay, so let's start at the back of your question in terms of skills. So the report that she's mentioning, for others that don't know about it, we have what we call general reports that are publicly available. So at the end of a PFMA cycle and an MFMA cycle, we then issue what you can call a summary, right, of all the findings and how. Remember when I was talking about the plotting from doing harm to doing good, that report basically summarizes that, where we have put them on the continuum, etc. So I just wanted to give context to the report you were talking about before I gave you an answer. So yes, there are mechanisms that we are trying to put in place, right, to minimize the impact. You are right, I did say majority of our work comes after the fact. That's the nature of audit. But remember, I did say that we do have what we call proactive audits. And so either you can call it a proactive audit, and most of those are based on things like the whistleblower, like the lady was asking, right? So if there's an allegation that has come in through our processes, we then, depending on its agency, we can then look at it upfront. Hence DLCA. We were able to stop before the money went out, right? But also, we are starting to think about the fact that an audit will need to be continuous, ongoing throughout the process, right? And with the limited resources that we have, we are trying to see how we can do that. But for now, most of it is, yes, unfortunately, we will come after the fact. And then for that 1 or 2, we can do them upfront when we know about them. Because, for instance, if we get a whistleblower that says, this tender was awarded yesterday, because remember, like now we are on MFMA, right? So let's say it is a department that awarded a tender yesterday. So that will mean I will only get to audit it next year, right? But if it was to come now, like through that RFI process I spoke about, or our whistleblower hotline, then we actually assess how quickly we can respond to it. And then we will dedicate resources to it quicker if we are aware of it. But like I said, unfortunately for us, the nature of the career itself or the profession itself is after the effect, but we do have quite a few things that we have in place, and data analytics actually is one of them. As HSA, we have employed a tool that we call Impilo. So Impilo allows us to connect directly to the auditees system, like the GL, etc., right? And it's also helping us to also curtail some of those limitations. But Impilo is basically running real time, for lack of a better word. So at any time, you can get in there as an auditee, as an auditor, as in the audit team, and see if maybe there's anything that you want to look at that then will inform your next session. So we are making strides. There's little things that we are coming with.
Sure. Last question from Prof. Ben.
Thank you so much, and this was really, really phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. And also thank you for taking up the calling, for you and all your colleagues, because that's how we should overcome it. Just a question. You were talking about the whistleblowers. Is there a mechanism in South Africa, or is it in the development like overseas, where a whistleblower will get rewarded? I was just curious.
Okay. Oh, is that all?
And maybe if I
Yes.
can have a follow-up one, just a quick one
okay.
in it. When you were talking about the data analytics, and that's quite, when you were talking about the bank accounts and mapping that with the suppliers, etc. Does POPI apply, or is that the limitation in the way you do it? Because very interesting how you use the data analytics.
Oh, okay. Maybe let's start with the easier one. So currently in South Africa, no, we do not give rewards for whistleblowers, but I do know that in the realm of the updating of the Public Disclosure Act, those are some of the things that are being considered or are being put on the platform for people to see. So some of the things that are being recommended, it's not only the financial support, right? It's things like your psychological support and wellness holistically, and to see to what extent will we be able to do that. But currently, no, there isn't any money being given. So right now, it is literally a call. Somebody is just like, not on my watch, and then they come and they whistleblow and they let us know where the issues are. And then in terms of the data analytics, so in terms of the audit itself, the PAA Act, remember for us as auditors, HSA specifically, those banking details that we get given are part of our audit work. So for us, that's how we are covered. So it's, I don't think anybody else can access them, but even for us, when we actually do them, even when we report, we then don't say Prof. Ben Max FNB 12345 check account. The findings that we will have, for instance, if there was that, we will just say during our system audit, we found breaches on change of banking details, 65. But we never actually report on whose bank account, etc. We just say the number of the exceptions, and we report it that way, that there was a breakdown in controls, in application controls and access controls, and then we report it like that. But the information that we have is covered by the PAA as part of our audit evidence.
Last question from Ms. Kuzwa.
Thank you so much for the talk, Ms. Tholakele. So a lot of your discussion was based around what the AG does within the public sector, and especially around forensic audits. What is being done within private sector? So there's a lot of, so for example, there's large industries that affect our society or that are prone to fraud. So for example, maybe mining industry, manufacturing industry, there's a whole lot of them. What are the things that are being done there, or what could be done? Because the corruption exists everywhere, not just in public sector, public
Yes.
sector or municipalities, but it also exists within private sector.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, remember, all of those entities, right, are the suppliers to the public sector, most of them, right? So there is obviously private-public partnerships that normally go on. So, for instance, on the slide that I showed you where we collaborate, we actually sit on quite a few platforms where it is a collaboration between private sector and public sector. So one of the things that then happen mostly in the private sector is through the anti-money laundering. So FIC work, that's where then most of the private sector entities are located. So the FIC does what we call STRs, which, and now I must remember what they are, something report, suspicious transaction report, to then determine as much as this, it's the illicit side of things, illicit fund flow side of things, but they get to see where the money is spent. Because remember, even when those private sectors manufacture and do all of those things, they still have a bank account. and they can then do the flow of funds through there. And hence the collaboration again between public sector, which is us, DPCI, SIU, SARS, NPA. We have, I had that there at the bottom where it said shared services. So it's what we call a fusion center. So the private sector will come in from that perspective, right? The FIC will give us the STRs, and then there's what we call SUMLET, which is where all the banks sit, basically. So at SUMLET, the banks will also collaborate to see if there's any untoward STRs, and then they send them to shared services, which is the FIC, and then FIC then distributes it within the ecosystem for the relevant part of whatever the issue is. So for us, for instance, it will, if it comes back to HSA, it's to inform my risk assessment. So like now for MFMA, we have requested STRs for municipalities, right? So because they will see the money flow, they can tell us that this supplier, which is a private sector supplier, was appointed. We saw money coming in from a department or from a municipality, but when we look at the transaction outflow, it doesn't look like they are paying for, I don't know, if let's say they needed to build a road, we don't see them paying or buying things like tractors, etc., that you will need to do a road. So it is really a collaborative effort. There is things being done in that space. The private sector as well, in terms of forensics, you have your big fours, right? Your EY, your Deloitte, etc., your PwCs, SNG, etc. So in terms of also their tools and advancement, they might be also slightly more advanced with us. Hence, remember I said when we need imagings and the likes, then we go get them. So it is actually a collaborative effort. Remember, for every corruptee, there must be a corruptor, right? So the corruptee right now is public sector, but who's the corruptor? The private sector is the corruptor because they go in there through the tender. Whether it's a mine, whether it's the manufacturing, there is collusion. They form networks where they form a scheme. Not so long ago, there was one for the construction. Remember the soccer stadiums in 2010? That was private sector, right? They collaborated, they formed a scheme, and then they went and they tendered for the different stadiums, and they ensured through their bidding process that at least one of them will win one of the stadiums. So it is really a collaborative effort. The only reason I mention public sector so much is because the resources do go to the private sector, but they come from here. So yeah, but there is work being done across board, like I said, in terms of the forums. You have your G20s that is currently going on in the different spheres. You have, under FIC, there's also the illicit fund and endangered animals working group. There is an anti-corruption working group. Then you also have, there's an infrastructure and a health and the water. So you have what you call your sectors that are vulnerable. So in those sectors, there is a collaboration then between public sector and private sector to try and stem some of these issues. I hope I answered your question.
There's one question that has come through from the online audience. It's a quick question. Does the AGSA also audit the money that comes through as funds into the country? I think maybe they're referring to international donor funds that might come through, and if there are issues, what happens?
So, in a way we do, because it will get into National Treasury, which will then disperse it as budgets for the different auditees. So yes, you have what you call a grant income, which we audit extensively, and the grant income is basically us looking at whether the money is being utilized for that mandate, because a grant will come with terms and conditions, right? And some of these you will also see at NLC. NLC has been in the news, National Lottery Commission, I must remember. I'm not talking to my own people who will know what I'm saying. So you will have things, funds or institutions that disperse funds, like your National Lottery Commission, which will be the NPOs. I mentioned SASSA. So that's how we actually then audit it. We won't necessarily audit it that the president went into the investment summit and said, we're going to get 5 billion, and then we go audit that 5 billion as it comes in, because it comes in different tranches, and then it goes and it gets dispersed.
I think in the interest of time, I have to close the Q&A window. But as Tholakele has mentioned, the conversation does not end here. We have the networking session that will take place after the session that is here. And she's also mentioned that we need to take this dialogue into our classrooms, into boardrooms, and our different spheres of influence. So I know this was a very topical issue, and the Q&A window was very short, but the conversation will continue during the networking session. So thank you very much, Tholakele. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks again for the opportunity. Can I take my laptop now?
Okay. At this point in time, I would like to then call upon my colleague, Ms. Seho Malachi, to give the closing remarks. She is part of the Audit 3 team, and that is the team that has been responsible for planning and orchestrating this wonderful public lecture. So over to you.
Thank you very much, MC. I think it appears I enjoyed the lecture, I think, more than anyone. I don't know, it's because I'm part of auditing, I understand it better, I don't know, but like I'm feeling like I wish all my students were here to hear, the things we're saying in class are real and we don't just like making up stories. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the guest speaker and everyone that is involved in today's session, but especially the guest speaker for a well-delivered lecture, and our attendees, both physical and in the online platform, for gracing us with their presence, I think despite their busy schedules, and for always, again, being attentive. And that is evident from the type of question that come across. So my name is Seropoja Malachi, and as mentioned, I'm part of the lecturing team in the Auditing and Internal Control module that's within DCA, and we are teaching third-year students that after us then can now graduate and go and embark into different careers. I'm not alone. I'm in a team of 3 members. It's me, and we also have Mrs. Caroline Machika. We're also working with Mr. Lesego Khumalo in absentia. So from there, I just also want to thank my team for all the support to carry us all together up until today. So I think, as mentioned, today's topic emanated from the Auditing 3 lecturing team. And why is that? Is because the team believes in always bringing the industry where possible to engage in this type of conversation, so that in the classroom, we don't just preach to the students what's in the textbook, the theory alone, but we get to engage with what is really happening in the practical world. And as you can see, the topic that we explored was about the role of forensic auditing in tackling fraud and corruption in South Africa. And you might ask yourself as to why the topic? Why is the topic very important? So as you can see, I think this topic also, it ties to the University of Johannesburg strategic goals of ensuring that we impact our societies to which we are living in. So I'm just going to give you a big background, and as you can tell, I think due to time, you can see that what we thought of came out in the lecture where now our speaker elaborated in detail. So why did we think about this topic is, I think that the high level of fraud and corruption in South Africa that occupy our news, that occupy other digital platforms, I think are too loud to ignore. So sometimes one often think like, you really need to bribe someone to move higher up or even meet your personal goals. So again, in the auditing and internal control module, one of the topics that we introduced to our students is the Public Finance Management Act and the Municipal Finance Management Act. And why the topic is because we wanted to bring awareness to how does the public sector operates. So under both PFMA and MFMA, we focus specifically on what we call the accounting officer's responsibility, which are clearly nicely outlined under those sections. So, and then under those responsibilities, they include things like they are guiding the accounting officers as to how do you manage public funds, and they go on and on to say, like asset management, revenue, expenditure, liabilities. So from that, you can see that I think the problem is not lack of legislative framework, but the problem is implementation. So, that is why, and then now when we go, so we check at what are the key responsibilities. Some of those key responsibilities that we mentioned, I think, include fruitless and wasteful expenditure, unauthorized. So under those sections, they will tell you that an accounting officer must take all reasonable steps to make sure that they prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure, unauthorized, including irregular expenditure. But when you now look at the Auditor General of South Africa General Report, which I think was quite nicely mentioned even throughout the presentation, it seems as if the public sector keep on deteriorating, and mainly due to sometimes the fraud and corruption. And based on the AGSA report itself, it indicates that one of the main reasons municipalities are losing money include fraud committed by individuals. And today we just witnessed through the public lecture as to what are those examples of fraud that really emanate from the public sector side. And I like it when now they tie it back to the private sector to say, remember that these are our suppliers. So in our classes, meaning in the PFMA and MFMA topic, this kind of topic, it catch a lot of student interest, especially areas where we now mentioned the accounting officer's responsibilities that have been contravened or not adhered to. And many examples has been made. So when we're teaching, we're mentioning those examples like what is fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and then we draw the examples from, practical examples from the AG report. And one of the things that we mentioned, like we're just gonna mention those interests, those penalties that the public institution end up incurring because they didn't exercise proper care. And then again, maybe we give an example of unauthorized expenditure where you find that now the public funds are diverted. And again, an example was made in the public lecture itself. They are not used now for the purpose intended for without even getting the necessary approval from the relevant parties. And we also touch on irregular expenditure, I think, which is now become very famous and to our students, where now we give examples of flawed procurement processes, also known as supply chain management. So how can that irregular expenditure arise? And when we talk about this kind of topics, I think it brings a lot of mixed reaction to our students, where some believe like, you know what, it's all lost, fraud and corruption cannot be kept. But there are some of the students that they think a change is required. So given this background that I have given you, where fraud and corruption in the public and private sector thrive, the Auditing 3 lecturing team thought that this is a debate that we can have in order to see how can auditors, especially the forensic audit space, contribute to combating the fraud and corruption in South Africa. Then we felt it was necessary to engage with the people that are in public practice to lead the conversation. However, also invite the different role players as they are here today to lead the conversation as to how can different role players contribute, including our students that joined us here. So the need to convene under this topic was also necessary because I think as mentioned in different areas, fraud and corruption affect different stakeholders in various forms. And some of the examples here have already been mentioned. So, and since it affects different people, it cannot be left, and I think it's just a re-emphasis, it cannot be left to be a responsibility of one player. And why is that? Is, for instance, fraud and corruption leads to what? Poor public service delivery. And I think every one of us here can witness those kind of things. They mention things like decaying infrastructure, economic stagnation, increased inequality, and lack of justice. And why this is happening is because the money that was meant to be spent for the public is diverted for private gain. So in addressing this soaring fraud and corruption in South Africa, the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, especially Goal 16.5, they aim to substantially reduce fraud and corruption in all forms. And there were a lot of strategies that were put in place, and one of them includes the National Anti-Corruption Strategy that has been adopted by our government. However, despite the efforts to curb corruption in South Africa, the number of reported cases keep on increasing. And we thought a possible explanation to this can be a long-standing culture of bribery, which often evades the legal framework for combating bribery and corruption, as already indicated. So often, and this again, I think it came in the lecture and I was like, wow. So it's like we were preparing, sitting in the same room, great minds think alike. So often the consequences of fraud and corruption are far-reaching, as this acts erode the public trust in institutions. Like, we don't trust anymore. Should I go to the municipality? I know the level of attitude is not at the right place. So they tarnish our country image internationally. And when that is done, this discourage foreign investments, and again, it fuels instability, and we see a lot of protests now coming in because people are not getting what they think they are deserving. In conclusion, I think this lecture calls for different role players to make little impact in their own spaces to move towards a better South Africa free of fraud and corruption. And I'm saying it all starts with one thing, doing what is right when no one is watching. Thank you again for your attention. I look forward to continue this important conversation with you outside this public lecture. Let's not end it here, but let's carry the message forward. I thank you.
Thank you so much for those closing remarks. I think it is clear that we all have a responsibility. We've now reached almost the end of our session. When we started, you were welcomed officially by Prof. Ben, our leadership. I think it is appropriate that the final closing and votes of thanks is also given by our HOD, Ms. Boitumelo Kuzwayo. So I'll now hand over to Ms. Kuzwayo. But from my side, thank you so much for being a wonderful audience, and I'll see you during the networking session. Thank you so much. Over to Ms. Kuzwayo.
Thank you, Philani. Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Not Tuesday, but Tuesday. Thank you for choosing to be with us today, and thank you for taking the time and choosing to be here to listen to our esteemed guest, Ms. Tholakele and Ndlazulwana. I greet you in the name of active citizenship and a corrupt-free South Africa and society. My role is rather easy. I'm here to give thank you to a few people for today's lecture. I think I'm going to start with our esteemed guest and keynote speaker, Ms. Tholakele and Ndlazulwana. We initially engaged with her through the Auditing 3 team last year, where she came to speak to some of our students, and we felt that, let us try extend it, the discussions that she has and the thoughts that she presents on forensic audits, and expand it to beyond just our students within our campus. And, when Mr. Philani was reading her CV, I was like, oh, her CV is double my height to the power of 2. She has a very esteemed and a very well-established CV, and that's why I really thought, we can't let society not hear the wisdom that you have to share. And thank you for that. There's a few things that you've mentioned, and I think I'll just mention 4 important things. You know, corruption affects all of us. It doesn't just affect people within the public sector, it trickles down to all of us. And I think the one thing that is quite important from that is we need to be active citizens as part of ensuring that corruption comes to an end or is reduced. I was having a discussion with my uncle this past weekend, and he was talking about how in parts in the northern region of the rest of the world, people get taxed 50% of their salary, but they actually get working public health facilities, good education systems, everything just works. And in some countries, people retire at 45. I would love to. I would really love to retire by the age of 45, but it's things like corruption that actually stifle that type of growth and the things that we need within our society for us to function. And yeah, so that's just one of the things. And I think to materiality, and not taking out what or taking away what we are taught or what we were taught and what we teach as lecturers, is materiality. Every little bit counts. So, and even if it's 1 cent, if 1 million people take 1 cent, it's 1 million rand. And I think there was a scandal a few years ago within the banks where there was a genius of, I don't know how people come up with such ideas. This person just took 1 cent from every transaction. And they had, and this is not to give people ideas who work in banking sectors, but some bright individual said, let me just take 1 cent from every transaction that takes place within a bank. And to think about the millions of transactions that take place within a bank every day, it just speaks to the fact that fine, materiality is important, but every little bit counts. And that's something that we shouldn't forget as a society, even when we go out, even speaking out on what might seem to be quite trivial, but it does add up if it's done as a collective over time. So that's the second point. And then the last one, which is, how can I put it? It's almost like, of course, but it's what she said that, you know, it's the basics. Ask yourself, does it make sense? Applying your intuition. You know, sometimes we doubt how we feel or the things that don't feel right to us. But it's important for us to trust our intuition and to question things. Professional skepticism isn't only applicable to people within professions, within different companies, but we also need to apply it in our day-to-day interactions. So even like just the basic things. So I think that's just the one important part that I think she left for me as a poignant point as part of her discussion. So please accept a small token of appreciation from us as a department. This is from us to you. It's very immaterial. No need to declare.
Wow, it's stuff like that. You declare everything.
Indeed. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's just a few things to remind you about the Department of Commercial Accounting, wherever you travel, and to keep you warm as the School of Accounting within winter. So thank you so much. Next, I'd like to thank everyone who made this day possible. I'd like to start with the Auditing and Internal Controls 3 team. Seho didn't mention it, but they call themselves the A team. She probably didn't mention it because they disputed with other teams within the department. But thank you for coming up with the topic. Thank you for always challenging me as a HOD to say, what about doing this particular topic? So thank you for coming up with the idea. To Prof. Dankiso in his absentia, he is our executive dean, and he helped us to be in this particular venue. So Ubuntu Chambers within the university isn't graced by anyone and everyone. So thank you to Prof. Dankiso for allowing us to actually get the approval to be here. And as Mr. Pilani said, to the father of our home, Prof. Ben Marks, he has been here for 30 years, almost the number of years that I've been in existence. Thank you for your wisdom, Prof. Thank you for your support all the time. We really appreciate it as the father of the School of Accounting and within the two departments, and we really appreciate your support all the time. Thank you. To Lerato Mabanga, our marketing and communications coordinator, you received emails from her from the invites to the communication about where to come. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and you do it with grace, as always. Thank you. To two people in absentia, Temba Masango as well as Tandi Nomvele, our administrator as well as our departmental secretary, thank you for the work that you do within the department and helping us to put this event together. To the team in front of me from Visual Studios, thank you for making it possible for us to capture this moment, to capture it and share it with people beyond this room, and to our photographer as well from Visual Studios for capturing the moment. Some people are wondering, will we get pictures? Yes, you will. You will get a link in a few days to be able to reflect on today. And we'll also share a recording of this particular session, which was live streamed. And please distribute it far and wide with the people that you would know who weren't able to grace us with their presence today. To Gail, our student assistant, and to the peer mentors who ushered you here in the orange T-shirts and Gail at the back, thank you so much. In the VC's words, this is the great University of Johannesburg, and it is great in magnitude, physically, and in other ways. So thank you for ensuring that our guests didn't get lost, and for helping to prepare for today's session. Then to our MC, Mr. Pilani Tusini, he steered the ship quite well today. Not well, exceptionally. Thank you so much for being our MC and for guiding us today. We really appreciate it. As well as, most importantly, to the audience. I think this session wouldn't be possible if you weren't here, both physically and virtually on our live stream. We hope that you walk away with something. And what I love about some of our public lectures is it's not only targeted at students, we also try to target people within industry. So within the room, there's people from fellow academic institutions like UNISA. I think some of us have questions that we have set for future tests and exams around forensics and audits. We have colleagues from SARS as well as people from the legal fraternity and people within the university itself. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we hope to see you at future events as well. And then, before we close, I'd just like to speak to our fundraising campaign. So as a department, as Prof. Ben mentioned, we are within the CBE, the College of Business and Economics. It is a mega faculty. So we are called a college because we are a mega faculty. We constitute 40% of the student cohort within the institution. And within the College of Business and Economics, there's about 6 or 7 schools, and the biggest one is the School of Accounting. So as Prof. Ben mentioned, if the CBE fails, the university fails. If SOA fails, the CBE fails. So we cater to about 10,000 students within the School of Accounting. And one of the challenges that we face every year is for our returning students, they struggle to actually get registration fees in order to come back into the system and to continue either with their second or third year studies. As a department, we took it upon ourselves to engage in different activities, whether it's be running the comrades, running 2 oceans, or doing a triathlon. 2 years ago, we did a team triathlon. There were 2 teams. One person swam in the department. Someone put up their hand and said, I can swim. Someone said, I can cycle, I can run. And we put together 2 teams where we participated in different triathlons in order to raise awareness about the challenges our students face, as well as to raise funding. To Ms. Tholakele's words earlier on, every little bit counts. So any forms of donations are appreciated, and please share it with your various networks that you may know of. And then, almost last and not least, our next event is taking place on the 18th of September. And it will be a panel discussion that will take place at the School of Transport and Hospitality. We will be hosting a panel discussion with the keynote speaker being Mr. Victor Sekese, the CEO of Sizwe Ndzaluba Koboto. It's one of the big 5 audit firms in the country, and he will be joined with fellow panelists, Mr. Kadapiri from the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, also known as ACCA, as a facilitator, by Dr. Sedzani from UNISA, and Mr. Betau, who is a serial entrepreneur. And I could almost hedge my bets, don't tell me I never told you. He's probably the next Mark Zuckerberg of Africa and probably the world from an entrepreneurship perspective. So he'll be joining us together with the fellow panelists to be discussing the importance that entrepreneurship has within accounting profession, and making sure we create entrepreneurs as opposed to people who are graduates and just want to go into a job, so that we can actually deal with and alleviate the challenges that we face within our society. So please follow us on our different platforms. There's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, as well as Instagram. We'll be advertising it there, and we look forward to seeing you there as well. So in closing, finally, I would like to invite everyone in the room to please join us for some eats to my right, this side. And you're also more than welcome to take a lot more pictures. There's a banner there where you can take pictures, and please post and tag our different, our actual our accounts on the different social media platforms. And to our guests online, they've probably had breakfast because they are sitting in the comfort of their workplace or at home watching this particular session. So from my side, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Just in closing, because I must have integrity and keep to my words, my colleague will be handing out the gifts I promised for the questions. So you see, I wasn't lying. Yeah, but thank you.